13th step. I never believed that a house could remember what had been done inside it. I thought wood and plaster were too dumb to hold secrets, too dead to harbor memory. I thought people left traces, photographs, journals, stains, but buildings? No, they were just shells, hollow and indifferent. That was before I spent those nights in the house on Ocean Avenue, before I learned how wrong I was, before I stood at the foot of the staircase and counted my way up, step by step, until I reached the one that should not exist. The 13th step. The first time I entered the house, the air was heavier than outside. It wasn't just the closed windows or the stagnant air of long neglect. It was something denser, thicker, as if the walls had inhaled long ago and never exhaled. Dust clung to the beams overhead, cobwebs swayed like strands of rotting silk, and the faint smell of mildew lay beneath it all. But threaded through that damp odor was something sharper, faintly metallic, like a rusted nail or dried blood rubbed between the fingers. I remember standing in the entry hall, staring at the staircase. The wood was dark with age, polished smooth by countless footsteps, yet dulled by years of abandonment. Each step was numbered in my mind before I even placed a foot upon them, as if I already knew I would one day have to count. I felt the air drifting down from above, colder than the first floor, as though the upper level was holding something back, exhaling only in reluctant breaths. The first night passed in uneasy silence. I lay awake in a borrowed sleeping bag, the creaks of the house settling above me. At first, they sounded like any old house groaning against its own weight, but the more I listened, the less natural they became. The sounds didn't scatter randomly. They gathered step by step from one point to another, pausing, then moving again. The creaks moved down the staircase, deliberate, like the weight of a person descending in the dark. I told myself it was nothing. My mind made patterns out of random noises, that was all. Yet when I dared to glance at the staircase, the shadows pooled thicker there, stretching unnaturally long, as though the steps had more depth than the space allowed. I closed my eyes, but I couldn't close my ears. The phantom footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs, paused, and then there was only silence. Silence that pressed on my eardrums until I almost wished for more creaking, more proof that it was simply wood shifting under the strain of years. The second night, I gave in to my own paranoia. I stood at the foot of the staircase with a flashlight clutched tight in my hand. Its beam was thin and weak against the wide dark of the house, catching particles of dust in midair like drifting snow. I placed one foot on the first step, then another. Each board groaned under my weight. I counted aloud in a whisper that felt stolen from my own throat. 1, 2, 3. By the 7th step, the air had changed. It was colder, as though the wood was bleeding the heat from my body. The smell intensified too, no longer faint mildew and rust, but a pungent rot, sour and sweet at once, like meat left too long in a sealed room. I tightened my grip on the flashlight and continued. 8, 9, 10. The steps stretched in front of me, but something about them was wrong. My memory, my eyes, even my sense of balance argued with one another. The staircase looked ordinary, yet as I climbed it felt longer, higher, as if each step carried me farther away than the last. My whisper cracked as I reached 11, 12. And then my foot came down on a step that wasn't supposed to be there. 13. The wood was softer beneath my sole, spongy as though damp. The flashlight flickered, and in that faltering glow I saw it. The 13th step, darker than the rest, the grain swollen and warped. A bead of liquid seeped from a crack, thick and black, trailing down like syrup. I knelt in disbelief, the smell burning in my nostrils, metallic and rotten all at once. When I touched the step with my fingertips, the liquid smeared warm across my skin, sticky, refusing to wipe away. The house sighed above me. That was the only way I can describe it. A deep, groaning exhale that rattled through the walls and shook dust loose from the rafters. I stumbled back down the stairs, not daring to count anymore, not daring to acknowledge what I had stepped on. The liquid clung to my hand, shining in the beam of the flashlight, and when I finally scrubbed it away in the kitchen sink, the smell lingered long after the stain had gone. The nights that followed blurred together in fragments of half-sleep and watching shadows. I would lie on the floor, staring at the ceiling, listening. Always the same pattern, the creaks rising from the top of the staircase, descending slowly, step by step. But now I noticed something else. Each time, the descent grew heavier, louder, as though whatever made the sound was gaining weight, substance, presence. The final pause at the bottom stretched longer each night, as if it were waiting for me to acknowledge it. On the fourth night, I climbed again. I don't know why. Compulsion, perhaps, or a sick curiosity that gnawed until I couldn't resist. I counted as before. 10, 11, 12, and then I reached the 13th step once more. It was worse this time. The wood bowed beneath me, soft and wet, and a low vibration hummed through it, pulsing into the soles of my feet. I shone my flashlight down. The grain rippled as though alive, as though something beneath the wood shifted and stirred, pressing upward. The liquid seeped faster now, glistening in thick rivulets. And then I heard it. Not just creaks this time, not just the groan of a tired old house. A sound between a moan and a breath, rising through the staircase itself. It vibrated through the banister, through my bones. I stumbled back, heart racing, and fled down the steps, my foot catching, my hand scraping raw against the wood. The house seemed to laugh at me in its silence. I stopped sleeping after that. I would sit awake through the long hours, every creak amplified, every shadow stretching farther. My body ached with exhaustion, my mind fogged, but I couldn't bring myself to close my eyes. The house waited for me to yield, to rest, so it could move while I was helpless. The last night is clearest of all, as if it burned itself into my memory. The creaks began again, slow and steady. 1, 2, 3, descending, always descending. My skin prickled as I realized the rhythm was wrong. Too slow, too heavy. It was no longer the sound of someone walking. It was the sound of something dragging itself, pulling downward, step by step, groaning under its own weight. When the sound reached the 12th step, I held my breath. The silence that followed was unbearable, my chest screaming for air. And then at last it came. The sound of weight pressing onto that impossible place. The 13th step. A wet squelch, a moan, and the sound of wood giving under pressure. I couldn't look. I couldn't move. My body was locked in terror as the silence swelled again. Something shifted in the air, a presence thicker than smoke, colder than winter. It filled the hall, pressing against me, surrounding me. My eyes darted toward the staircase despite myself. The flashlight slipped from my hand, clattering across the floor, its beam swinging wildly up the steps. And there it was. Not a figure, not something I could name. Only the step itself, bloated and swollen, rising higher than the rest, as though it had grown, as though it had consumed every foot that had ever touched it. The liquid poured in streams now, black and glistening, and in the sheen of the flashlight, I thought I saw faces writhing in the wood grain, mouths open, eyes wide. I don't remember leaving the house. I don't remember opening the door or stepping into the night. My memory cuts and resumes with me standing outside, gasping in the cold air, my hands trembling, my heart clawing against my ribs. The house loomed behind me, its windows dark and empty, but I knew the staircase inside still waited, step by step, always waiting. And sometimes, when I close my eyes at night, I hear it again. The slow, deliberate creak of weight descending. 1, 2, 3. Always stopping at 12. Always waiting for me to return, to place my foot on the 13th step once more. Green seep. The first time I noticed it, I thought it was nothing more than a water stain. Old houses breathe moisture into their walls. They hold dampness like lungs that never fully exhale. So when I caught a faint discoloration on the wallpaper in the upstairs hall, I dismissed it. Pale green, no bigger than a coin, barely visible in the dim light. I told myself it was harmless. But the house did not forget. The stain grew. The hall was narrow, suffocated by wallpaper printed decades ago, yellowed now with age. A floral pattern, faded, curling at the seams. The smell of old paper clung to the place, that dry, stale odor of books forgotten in attics. When the light fell just right through the small window at the end of the corridor, I could see the surface rippling, not flat, not still, but restless, like something shifting just beneath. The green spot spread across the wall slowly, deliberately. By the second night, it had bloomed into a hand-sized smear, its edges dark and wet. I leaned close with the weak beam of my flashlight. The surface glistened, not damp like rain, not the slick shine of water. Thicker, glossy, viscous. My nostrils burned. The smell was sharp, chemical, like copper and rot mixed together, a sweetness that turned sour at the back of my throat. When I touched it, the tip of my finger came away sticky. The substance clung stubbornly, resisting, stretching into a thin thread before snapping back to the wall. I wiped it against my jeans, but the smell followed me long after, coating my skin with something I could not name. The nights wore on. The sound of the house deepened, timbers groaning low, the faint crackle of paint peeling in the dark, the hollow echo of pipes that had not carried water in years. But beneath it all was another sound, faint but persistent. A slow, wet drip. I would lie awake in the downstairs room and hear it above me. One drop, then another. The silence in between was worse than the sound itself, each pause stretched tight, as though the house was holding its breath before exhaling a single bead of liquid. I climbed the stairs again on the third night. The air was different now, heavier, moist, as though I had entered a cellar instead of an upper floor. My flashlight cut a pale beam across the wallpaper. The green had spread wider, an irregular blotch reaching from the floor to waist height. The surface bulged in places, swollen, as though the wall itself was pregnant with something pressing from behind. I leaned closer. The texture was obscene. It reminded me of blisters that form when skin burns, bubbles rising under the surface, filled with clear fluid ready to burst. But these were not clear. The green seepage glistened within, moving sluggishly, thick as honey but alive in its slowness. When I pressed my palm against the wallpaper, the surface flexed and gave, yielding like soft flesh, like bruised fruit. The smell enveloped me, sour, metallic, and unmistakably organic. I gagged, clutching my mouth, but I could not step away. My eyes watered from the stench, yet I stared at the swelling wall, unable to turn away. In the silence of the hall, I could swear I heard it. A faint gurgle, a murmur deep inside the plaster, as though liquid crawled unseen through veins in the walls. By the fifth night, the drip had become constant. I followed it with trembling steps, each creak of the floorboards answering the slow patter of fluid striking wood. When I turned the corner, I found the floor darkened. A puddle glimmered faintly in the flashlight beam, a shallow pool where the green liquid had bled through and spilled onto the boards. It spread in irregular shapes, sticky and wet, soaking into the cracks. The odor was suffocating now, coating the back of my tongue with bitterness, making my throat tighten. I crouched low. The liquid bubbled faintly where it gathered, as if it was breathing, releasing soft burps of gas. Bubbles rose and popped silently, leaving tiny craters in the sticky surface. I leaned closer until my reflection trembled faintly across the pool. For a moment, I swore I saw more than just myself, shapes writhing, eyes blinking, something beneath the surface struggling to rise. I recoiled, stumbling backward, but the floor betrayed me. My heel slipped in the liquid, and my hand shot out to catch the wall. My palm landed squarely on the largest blister. It burst under my weight. The sound was wet, obscene, like tearing open rotten fruit. The liquid gushed between my fingers, warm, viscous, and endless. It ran down my wrist, my arm, seeping into the sleeve of my shirt. The smell engulfed me, copper and bile, death and sweetness, all at once. I tore my hand away, shaking it violently, but the substance clung stubbornly, stretching in thick strands before breaking, smearing across my skin like oil. The wall sagged where the blister had been, collapsing inward slightly, revealing a black hollow beyond. My flashlight beam trembled as I shone it into the gap. What I saw was not wood, not insulation, not the hidden skeleton of a house. It was wet. The interior glistened, organic, pulsing faintly as though it were alive. The drip echoed louder, faster, the liquid oozing through unseen channels and veins. I fled then. My footsteps thundered down the stairs, the air behind me heavy, wet, as though the house exhaled in triumph. My skin burned where the liquid had touched me, a rash rising in angry red welts that refused to fade. No matter how I scrubbed, no matter how I washed, the smell clung. It seeped into my pores, into the fabric of my clothes, into the deepest part of me. And still I hear it. Long after I left that place, the sound follows me, a slow, patient drip. Sometimes I wake to find damp spots on the walls of rooms I know are clean. Pale green at first, almost invisible, then darker, spreading. I run my hand across the surface, trembling, and feel the faint give beneath my touch, the suggestion of something swollen, waiting, pressing outward. I know what comes next. The blister will swell, the surface will tremble, and one night, when I am weakest, when I am too tired to resist, it will burst. The house was never just wood and plaster. It was a body. It still is. And whatever seeps through its veins has found me. It has always been searching for a way out.